Hope you guys enjoy this and go away so inspired. And so, as soon as Dr. James Simmons gets in here, I'll shoot him a request and we'll get started, guys. We will. And so, if you don't know who I am, my name is Kimberly Ellis, and my platform, my handle is the Diabetes MP. And I am going to be leading a 4-part series throughout the whole month. There you go, James. I'm going to send you a request. Okay. And then we're just going to wait and see if everything comes in. Oh, thank you, Casey. Hey, how are you?
Hello, I'm well. How are you?
I am great. I was just telling the people about what we're doing and just we weren't doing anything. We are just kind of chit chatting, you know what
Just
I'm saying?
chatting away. That's
Yeah.
good though. Awesome, Kim. So nice to like meet you in person.
I know,
Yeah.
modern day meeting each other. This is how we do now.
Right. Exactly.
I know we've been Insta friends for a while, but I am so excited to talk to you because, I be kind of lurking in these Instagram streets and I be looking at people and I be looking at you and you're just so inspiring to me. And I'm just so glad that you decided because you've been busy. I saw all the speaking things you've been doing. So thank you for sitting down with me.
Of course. Thank you for inviting me. I absolutely love like the second you were like, I want to talk about like Black nurses, our history in this profession, as well as like what's going on now and just like my experiences and whatever. I was like, yes, I am in. Let's do this right now. Like
Yes.
let's not wait till February. Like let's do it now. So I'm glad we're here. I'm gonna make sure. Hold on, Rob. I know we're live. I'm gonna make sure.
And I'll just go ahead and just kind of complete what I was saying. So basically, guys, if you don't know, this is Black History Month, okay? And what we're going to do, it's a celebration. We're going to celebrate Black nurses. We're going to celebrate nursing because, hello. We're doing all the work, in the nursing profession and just in what we've been going through. And so I felt like we really needed to lift up people who are really doing the work, not just online, but offline as well. And I wanted to talk to individuals that had very unique stories and just so we can get to know you better, okay? Because, the thing about social media, we only see just a little bit of people, you know what I'm saying? And we do share our lives, but that's still just a sliver. Like, we don't know what people, where they came from, what drives them. And this is just the time to get to know everyone. And so, again, my name is Kimberly. I'm the Diabetes MP. One of the things that I am very passionate about is culturally competent care, especially in relation when it comes to diabetes management and education. Now, we as nurses all know that African Americans are in a group that's a high risk group for many different reasons. And so I felt like this was very important for, I wanted to get to know people. And so I feel like this is a great way that we can know people on another level than what we see in the day to day. Okay. And so we have today our wonderful guest, Dr. James Simmons. Okay. And he has a whole bio, and honey, we're gonna read this bio because he needs all the things. Okay,
Whoa.
we're gonna read your bio because you know what, you get your flowers now. Okay,
You're gonna make me nervous. You're gonna make me nervous. I gotta sip my ginger ale.
no, the people need to know. The people need to know. Okay, and so I really, as I was getting these bios, I was like, look at here. Okay, so let's learn about James a little bit, and then we're going to let you talk about your story. So you guys know him as Ask the NP. That is his handle, and he's a board-certified acute care nurse practitioner. He is on the COVID front lines. Thank you for your service there. And the thing that is really interesting about James is that he does a lot of media. He does lots of media on air. You've probably seen him or heard. He's been seen on NBC. He's been seen on Fox. He's been seen on CBS, Sirius, XM. What do you not do? Okay. What do you not do? And so the thing too that is very interesting and why I wanted you in particular is because you check more boxes for minorities than just, you know,
Right.
being black. You know what I'm saying? And I think one of the things that will really help people to understand, not just African Americans, but just people who are different than them, is that we have to humanize people. Like, you got to know people's story so you can have empathy, so you can know. So when we say things like Black Lives Matter or what have you, or, you know, systemic racism or the racism that's in healthcare, like, it's not just words. You know what I'm saying? It's just not words. Like,
Right.
you know us and you can hear us, and we're people. And so I wanted to bring you on because I want to hear about all of this. Okay. And so let's get right on into it. So the first thing is, let's start from the beginning. What were your inspirations to even drive you into the nursing profession?
You know, I think, thank you. First of all, thank you so much for having me. Thank you for that, like, embarrassing me. I'm trying really hard to, that's one of the things. That's actually one of the things I think that a lot of people of color have a hard time with, a lot of Black folks with, a lot of queer individuals have a hard time with, is accepting those flowers, right? Accepting that stuff. We're not used to people praising us for the things that we do. So thank you. I'm practicing at that. So thank you. I was really trying to think back about who my inspirations were to get into nursing, and there's one in sort of person and situation. But then also, like, I was thinking about who were my Black nurse people that I got to look up to when I was younger, and we don't talk about Black nurses as people that we look up to, that like as role models, right? It doesn't exist. Now, I knew lots of Black nurses where I grew up.
Yeah.
Who were influential in my life, like as a part of my church community or, the community where I live, but it's not a lot of famous Black nurses, right? Like, let's just be honest. Like, Sojourner Truth and Harriet Tubman are the two that most people know, but most people don't even know them for their work as nurses. Yeah. So, my inspiration, honestly, is my mother, who is, so for folks who don't know, I am a Black biracial man. So my father is Black, my mother is white. Deep in our family roots, both sides have a lot of indigenous American blood, but I don't identify with a particular tribe. So my mother is white, but she raised 3 little Black kids in the hood. And while she was doing that, as a single mom, and while she was doing that, she was a pediatric ICU nurse.
Oh, wow.
And I always thought it was the most badass thing that my mom would just, like, she worked night shifts sometimes, so she would just go up and, she'd come back with her girlfriends and they'd be this is how old I am. Are you ready? They'd be sitting on the stoop outside drinking Bartles and James, wine coolers, talking about, oh, this and that happened. And, she would tell these stories of just the families that she helped and the kids that she helped and everything. And it was really, really inspirational for me. And so I very much was attracted to the profession, to nursing, to healthcare. And I loved it from an early age. But then, something, I grew up in Omaha, Nebraska. And so I grew up in this really weird dynamic where during the week, often my mother would be the only white person that I would see.
Okay.
Because I kind of grew up in the hood. And then on the weekends, my mother would sometimes take us to where her grandparents lived. And then my sister and brother and I would be the only Black people I would see. Because in rural Nebraska, it's not a lot of Black folks running around, right? So I had this, like, really interesting dichotomy of experiences. So being the brown, fat, effeminate kid, knowing that I was kind of different, knowing all of that, I wasn't in a rush. People already were teasing me for being gay. And this was when I was 10, even 12, right? So I wasn't in a rush to be like, I can't wait to be a nurse, right? Like, that's like just the whole male nurse thing. That was a whole thing. So I always knew though in the back of my head that I really wanted to do this. Well, it also turns out that I was really good at journalism, and apparently I'm good at talking. So I went and got a broadcast journalism degree. Fast forward through high school, my bachelor's degree is in broadcast journalism, and so that was great. And I turned that into like a journalism, PR, marketing career, and it was awesome. But the entire time, that little voice in the back of my head just would not let me go. It would not let go. So I decided to, at age 29, I was like, I'm done. I'm going to leave this corporate career. I had been taking prerequisites slowly for years and years and years.
Okay.
Right, a little night school at the community college in Chicago, like, you know, a little like microbiology on, you know, Tuesday and Thursday nights, whatever, like doing that whole thing that lots of people do. And then I applied to an accelerated nurse practitioner program.
Okay.
And I didn't even know really what that meant. I just knew that like my mother was such an inspiration to me because of everything she talked about with the families that she helped, with the kiddos that she helped. She loved pediatrics. She loved kids. And, you know, her being an inspiration for me, I was like, I don't want to look back and be 85 on my deathbed, or, you know, 107, because, you know, I'm going to try to live forever, and be like, well, what if, right? What if I let go of all the haters? What if I let go of all that self-doubt, all of that society stuff that was holding me back, and decided, like, you know what, screw it. I'm going to do me. I'm going to do the thing that I feel like I need to do to give back to my community, to give back to the society overall. And, you know, I am a spiritual person, not particularly religious, but spiritual, but I do feel like it was a calling. Like, I had this calling, so you got to do this. And so I quit my job and I did it, and I have never looked back, and I've never been happier. I have never regretted it, not once.
So it's interesting because you actually made a career shift. So you did a pivot. And so I think a lot of people, that speaks to a lot of people too, because I think especially now, I think a lot of people are like really kind of seeing their employers for what they are or lack thereof. And I think that some people are just afraid to like make that switch too, you know, especially being that you actually like went to school for journalism, and you like 29, that means that you had some skin in the game.
Yeah, I was 29. I was being offered a 6-figure job at the same time that I had to decide to quit. And this was I worked for PepsiCo, which owns like Gatorade and Quaker Oats and whatever. It's an amazing company. It was great. I was fast tracking my way through corporate life. Like, it was good. I was going to have that career.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people come to those crossroads, and you know, I never thought, kind of to fast forward a little bit, I never really thought at the time that I would have an opportunity to merge, because I do love journalism and I do love media. That's why I do it. And I never thought I would have an opportunity to kind of merge the two.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just was so focused on nursing, and like, I actually went into it wanting to be a public health nurse. And I ended up becoming an acute care, you know, adult gero acute care, which is like the furthest from public health, right? But I also feel like it's a 360 thing. So for those of y'all listening who understand this, like, we see the sickest of the sick, and almost every single time someone comes in and I'm treating that patient in the ICU or as a hospitalist or whatever, you realize how important public health is. You realize how important preventative health is to stop the people from having gotten to you so sick in the first place.
Yeah. And you know what? You mentioned something too about not like feeling like you couldn't merge the two as well. And I feel like I do believe that is the now and the future, because people are wanting, especially in the middle of what we're dealing with, you know, people are wanting to hear from reputable sources, and, you know, and so, I mean, like, that to me is an inspiration, because like going to school for me, like, I remember being an undergrad and I wanted to own my own business. And I remember asking in undergrad, way back when, like, so what if you wanted to do X, Y, and Z, and being shut down in the middle of class? Like, it was the only thing that was open was like, you go to the hospital, you work, you go, and if you want to go get a higher degree, you become a nurse practitioner. That was it. That's all they said.
Yep.
That's all they said.
They
didn't
talk
teach. About you go
That's
to teach, and every time they talked about DMP, it was only in regards to teaching, and that was it. It was so limited. So when I got out of school, my view was so limited, and it wasn't until I became a nurse practitioner and honestly went to the AANP conference where I met other nurse practitioners, and because they were offering a lot of entrepreneur classes, which I was like, wow, really? And so I signed up for a lot of them. And so I'm in these classes with 50, 70 people, and they're asking like expert entrepreneurs that are nurses about setting up businesses. And I'm like, this is a whole thing.
Yep. It is. And we don't teach baby nurses it. I shouldn't say. Now listen, I know it's mostly nurses watching. I say baby nurses, and I say that all out of love. I mean, when I say baby nurses, I mean nurses who are getting their RN right now, whether that's ADN or BSN program. So, but we don't teach that in baby nursing school, like at all, which I kind of get it. Like that is it's so important to nail the fundamentals, right? Like you have to get those fundamentals. No ifs, ands, or buts about that. But at the same time, I feel like it's the same thing in terms of like education in high school. Like we need to be teaching finance to individuals, particularly Black folks and people of color. We need to be teaching finance, just like we need to be teaching a different type of history. If I'm going to bring up race, like, right, it's Black History Month, but we need to talk about more than just Martin Luther King, and we need to talk about it more than just in February, right? Because there's a whole history of this country that gets left out because we don't have time to teach it, or because it's white people developing the curriculum and white people teaching the curriculum to a room full of people of color. So things like that, I think we can extend that into, I'm bringing this analogy around. I feel like we can extend that into bachelor or RN programs.
Yes.
To let nurses know that you don't have to be just at the bedside. I mean, look at, and this is not, he did not ask me to say this. Trusted Health is not paying me for this conversation, I promise you, but like, look at the things that Dan Weberg is doing with Trusted Health and being a clinical innovator at Kaiser first, and then with Trusted now. Look at the things that you are doing. You dropped some knowledge on me today about the A1C in Black populations, African American populations. I was like, I have been practicing for 8 years and I did not know this.
I didn't know it either. And you wait, y'all. I got some more stuff coming out.
Do you? Good.
I do, because I'm spending the whole month just talking about the African American that has diabetes. And I'm also throughout the year want to collaborate with people of other cultures, because there's this idea that you're a high risk group because you're just, Black people just get diabetes. Well, no, there's different reasons why. There's social determinants of health that do that, and there's culture that's behind it. And it's like you really have to look at people as individuals, and then as just people, and for humanity. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And I remember sitting in class, and I don't know what they teach now, but I remember sitting in class and going through supposed to be cultural training, and everything in the textbook was like, I'm Black. That's not true. That's not true.
Right. Because guess what? I bet you Black people didn't write the textbook. Like, let's just be, I've been super controversial all week, so Kim, I'll just own all this for you. You can follow me if you want, but some people are gonna be mad, but Black folks didn't write the textbook. And a lot of times you're so right. We talk about like understanding cultural competencies, and it is the framework. Nursing, one of the things we do as nurses is, which I think is so fantastic and separates us, doesn't make us better, it just separates us from the other healthcare professions, is that we really are taught from day one how to take care of the patient as a whole individual within their system, right? And that system is their family, their community, their culture, then the country they live in, and it gets bigger, right? So we get that as nurses, like we really, really get that. But if you are not being taught cultural competency by someone who is culturally competent about the culture that you're learning about, you're going to learn it in the wrong way. And so everyone loves to throw this statistic out that, Black folks are 60% more likely to be diagnosed with diabetes than white folks. Okay, great. We know that statistic. It plays out, right? Like the data doesn't lie, but also why? And also you can't have the traditional methods of teaching about diabetes and diabetes prevention. They're clearly not working in the Black community. So you can't just keep trying to shove more of the same down the throat of Black folks. You have to actually involve people. You have to really understand the culture. It's the same with, one of the hospitals that I work with here in Los Angeles is primarily Latinx. And you can't tell Abuelita that she has to stop cooking that particular family dish for the family every week. You can't. No.
Yes.
She will not trust anything else that comes out of your mouth.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to learn how to navigate that stuff, right?
Mm-hmm. And even with that, it's even generational too, you
Mm-hmm.
know, because my dad, he is in his 70s. He's been eating meat and potatoes his whole life. And
Right.
I cannot tell you how many men, especially, but people of a certain generation, no matter what race they are, you can't spring things on them.
Right.
You know, you can't spring quinoa on them. They're like, what?
I mean, you can if you want to laugh.
Yeah, they're gonna do this because they are a generation that respects authority, but then they're gonna go and do what they want to do.
Yeah.
And it's just, again, looking at the person as an individual and like seeing what their needs and their preferences are. Well, one thing I do want to ask you, and this may be a loaded question because you can
Okay.
answer this in many different ways, but how has it been for you being a male nurse, a black nurse,
Mm.
a nurse that's, do you identify as gay?
Yeah, gay works or queer, either one.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm
So
not
how all of that, you know, and then coming in also, there's another layer of you coming in as an older nurse, you know, as well. Like, how has it been for you being all of the things?
uh, all of the things. We usually say all of the. Okay, I'm gonna tell you where I was about to go. We usually say all of the things in kind of in a good way, like, oh, that's all of the things. And I used to look at these things as maybe not positives, right? Like I'm just gonna be totally honest. Like I think so many of us grew up thinking that this cisgender, heteronormative, skinny white guy, particularly in the gay community, is the ideal, right? So I hated my body for a long time. I hated how I looked. Like I hated my gap tooth, which is kind of gone now, but like I hated my hair. I hated a lot of my blackness. And so and then add on top of that being fat, kind of effeminate, which is also another whole thing, and then being gay in the 80s and 90s in Nebraska. Like I'm trying to bring all of that into, right, just me as a person.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that was really incredible is by the time so you have a lot of lived life when those are the things that you deal with on the daily by the time you're 29.
Yeah.
And so everyone has kind of called me an old soul from jump, but I feel like a lot of it was like I just had a lot to deal with by the time I got to 29. So by the time I got to 29, I had to take a semester, not take a semester off, but I had to be removed from the dorms, and I had a security team following me in college. I had to do COVID quarantine in college because I had people trying to kill me
Really?
because I was gay. Yeah, at my undergraduate. So like things like that I have lived through. So by the time I got to 29. I think I also was like, if I'm gonna make this career jump, I'm also gonna shed all of it. I'm not apologizing for this anymore. And you know, I don't mean to sound like I'm so strong now, like whatever. Like I have my days, I have my moments.
Yeah.
But then I had such an incredibly supportive environment in my nurse practitioner program. It was the most kumbaya cohort of radicals, of individuals who were. I mean, we were protesting about police brutality against black folks in Chicago. People have been doing that long before us too, but we were doing that back in 2010.
Wow.
Before, you know, everybody was in the streets last year, right? For all of the things that were going down in Chicago. So like I had such an incredibly supportive environment and individuals who really sort of pushed me to be like, no, these things that you have held down for a long time as bad, because you're not, you know, I do identify as cisgender, but, you know, you're not a cisgender hetero white guy who's thin, who does all these things, whatever, and you're going into a female-dominated profession. Like, no, everything you're bringing to this is actually good. You need to use your voice. So
yeah,
it's been exceptionally challenging, to say the least. And sometimes it can be every day. You know, I think something that a lot of people don't think about, too, is every job I've ever had, whether as a bedside nurse, I travel nursed for a little while. Every nurse practitioner role I've had, you have to come out over and over again. And I think a lot of like cisgender heterosexual people don't think about that. So every job I go into, I'm worried every time. Like, okay, Right. So what am I? And now I'm not as worried. Now I'm just like, whatever. Yeah, my husband did it, and like
Mm-hmm.
people are gonna deal with it. Right. I wish
Yeah.
you would come for me when I
Yeah.
say my husband. Right. But I wasn't that way 7 or 8 years ago when I started this whole nurse practitioner journey, and it's really hard. And then add on top of that the layers of I'm worried about coming out. And then also, I mean, Kim, I'm sure you understand this from firsthand experience as well. Like people say racist stuff all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're the new guy, or if you're bedside and you're in I worked a little trauma. So like if there's a trauma going on and somebody says something racist about the black patient on the bed, you're like, is this really the time that I address this racist thing
Yeah.
that you just said? Or do we need to put, grandma's hip back together right now because she got hit by a car? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
those things happening. And then even in the boardroom, even at the lunch table, like all of these things. And it's a challenge. It's a challenge every single day, but it's a challenge that I feel very privileged to be someone that I have a voice right now that I can speak out about that challenge.
Yeah. And you know what? You see, even just hearing that, like this is what I try to convey to people when I'm talking to people. Like it's so much more than race. A lot of times
Mm-hmm.
it's when you're around someone who's just different from you. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying?
Mm-hmm.
Because me being a woman, I don't know how it feels to be a male nurse, but what I do remember is when I was in undergrad going through clinicals and having guys in my group and how people would say, I don't want them to be in this room with me. And
Yeah.
being from Tennessee, and having a certain generation, it just wasn't proper for a man to see a certain woman, in a certain place. And so they didn't want, I don't care if he needs to learn or not. He ain't coming in here. And they didn't care if he was whatever color. He's a man. I don't want him in here. And I never think about that because at all the things that I have to deal with, I don't have to deal with that. You know what I'm saying? And so it's something that if you don't deal with it, you don't think about it. So you do have to be open when people are telling you what their experiences are. You know what I'm saying? And I never thought about the fact that like it's like coming out every time. I never thought about that. Thank you for sharing that because I never thought about that. And I'm like, I guess it would be.
It's and that's even in a place, I've been lucky enough to live in when I left Nebraska, Iowa, where I kind of grew up. I've been in either Chicago, a little tiny bit of time in New York, and then LA. So like I'm in these super progressive places, and even then, sometimes it's challenging to do that. And I don't, people make these assumptions, and I think that's what a lot of, the Black Lives Matter movement was about last summer. I mean, it was very specifically about police killing black men. Like, let's not lose the focus of this. But the extension of these things that has come out of this is that people have to, like you said, think differently. You've got to take a step back and realize that the typical ways of thinking, the status quo before, got us to this place.
Yeah.
And we all want to do better. I've been saying quite a bit lately about how everyone's like, oh my God, I can't wait to go back to normal. I can wait a lifetime to go back to normal because I do not want to go back to normal. Because the normal before the pandemic, the normal before the Black Lives Matter movement of last summer was these systems of inherent racism in the healthcare system, in our general system, and transphobia, queer phobia, gay phobia, all of these things that we're starting to make cracks in now. We're starting to move in the right direction. And I don't want to go back, right? I want to keep going forward. And I feel like the new normal can be so much better if everyone, black, white, purple, brown, cis, straight, gay, whatever, take a second to say the traditional systems that I am used to receiving information from and receiving the world in might be broken. And if I am white and if I am straight and if I am cisgender, those systems might actually have been intentionally set up to elevate me and to hold others down. So if you can just start there, right? And just start with like, this James is crazy. He comes on this Trusted Health and talking about there's no black nurses that are famous, but don't be, you might not have to fully agree with me. That's fine. But I try to do this with my patients as well so that I actually hear what they're telling me when I interview patients. It's one of the best things I ever was taught as a nurse practitioner. And I pick up more in my interview than I think most people ever do with like CAT scans and with physical assessments or whatever. If you just remove the layers of all of the things that you've been taught and say, okay, I'm going to take a survey of where I stand and realize that like the system that I'm operating in might actually not be the best one.
Yeah.
Does that make
And
sense?
too, as well, like, and I was having this conversation with my husband, like, even me, being a Black woman, I have to recognize and embrace that I have privilege too, like
Sure.
in some areas as well,
Sure.
Socioeconomic, you know what I'm saying? Like, the further you are away from a certain type of life, the more you start to like forget how it was. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like these rappers who rap about their life when they were like, living the bad life, long ago, but you're not there. You've been far removed for 20 years.
Right.
You now are part of privilege. You have a privilege,
Yep.
And so we all, to a certain degree, like, I've even had to like recognize my own biases, because I'm like, what if I sound this way when I'm talking about another group that's not like me? You know what I'm saying? And hence why it's like, growing up in Tennessee, all you saw was black and white. I wasn't introduced to any other culture because that was it. Right. I mean, like, everybody was Baptist, some were Methodist, and we had a little sprinkle of Catholic. So when I went to college, it was like, there's a what? What is that? What? And so, but you have to embrace it. Like, you may not know everything. And, I always love to tell people to be curious and to be a student and to learn. And especially if you're in a role like ours, like, we can't cast it off. Like, we have to be able to give good care to everyone, and I have, just like you, I have heard people say things about patients, and I'm like, we literally got these people's hands in our lives. Like, are you really saying that? Like, it's not the time.
Isn't that something? Because these stressful situations bring out, they cut down everyone's like nice, I guess barriers is the right word, but like when you put people in stressful environment, they show you who they really are, right? And so it's no wonder that in healthcare, where it's so, we know, like, oftentimes we are dealing with life or death. Now, that life or death decision might be in a primary care environment in a clinic that is going to impact that person's livelihood and longevity, right? But you also might be in that critical trauma. You might in that trauma OR or whatever, and it's literally a life or death moment, right? And those situations we know bring out so much, which is why I think you so often see just real raw bigotry in healthcare situations. And you might have been like, dang, that was my girl. Like, we have been kikiing for years. Like, she's dope. She said all the right things. She's done all the right things. And then all of a sudden, we're taking care of whatever. And then some sort of something comes out of her mouth. And you're like, I cannot believe she just said that. Like, it happens.
Who are you?
Right. You're like, you just ruined my whole life. I thought we were cool.
Yeah, you're my work girlfriend. What are you doing?
It unfortunately happens all the time. And I think even those little nuancy things, right, like, happen with people of color in all workplaces, but, particularly in healthcare, where you're like, can I really? I love my work wife, right? When my work wife, my work husband, whatever, is white. So, like, you're just always waiting for the shoe to drop, right? You're always waiting. You're like, are they just going to say that thing that ends up happening? And sometimes it doesn't, but sometimes it does. And this is why I'm just so thankful for all of the conversations that have come out of last summer, because I think it has given everybody in situations like that an opportunity to be like, okay, you said this thing, or you keep doing this thing, or, I really, really, really don't need your commentary on my hair every time I change it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, whatever that thing is for you, you know what I mean? To have those conversations. And I think those little things are really what kind of move us forward,
So let me ask you this just quickly. Like, so with all the things that you've had to face, like, what's propelled you forward then? What's kept you like, I'm going to keep going? Because, like, to hear that you had a whole security detail, I mean, like, what made you say, I mean, because you could have easily been like, I don't want to deal with this.
I'm out. I was feeling Kamala Harris. I mean, I can look back now and laugh about it because that was 1998.
Mm-hmm.
Golly, what is that? 23 years ago? 20? Oh my God, I was such a baby. God, I was so young. What has propelled me? You know what? I am very lucky and very privileged. I have all four of my parents are living.
Okay.
So my mother and father got a divorce when I was very young, when I was 4, but they both really were instrumental in helping raise me. They both have remarried, and I am close to all four of them.
Okay.
So I think my parents were really, really incredible. We broke government cheese line, food stamps, the whole nine, right? I told you, like, my short, round, white mother raising 3 little black kids in the hood in the 80s. Standing in government cheese line, all that stuff, right? I think we all learn things from that, right? And everyone, not everyone, but a lot of people have that story, particularly people of color. So, my parents, there was never a question that I was at least going to try college. Now, I will argue as an older adult now that maybe college, like the traditional sort of 4-year thing, is not for everybody.
Yeah.
But there was never a question that I was going to college. And whether I had to take out every loan, whether I had to do whatever I had to do, sell cans at the recycling place to pay for college, I was going to college.
Yeah.
And so then when I was in college, this stuff started happening. And, at the time, my dad was very like, because it was around me being gay, and there was even some like kind of national press about all of this stuff, like everything that was going on our campus. And my dad was sort of like, well, whatever decisions you make, I still support you. You're still my son. So we had to work on the fact that like me being gay was not a decision. We worked on that later, and now we look back and laugh at it. Mm-hmm. But even at that time, when he was thinking that it was a decision, and he was like, whatever you decide, I still love you and I support you. And he's like, and you don't let these people win.
Yeah.
And because, I was like, I'm going to drop out of school. I'm going to go to different, try to do whatever. Like, and he was like, these people are operating out of fear and out of ignorance. Mm-hmm. And he's like, if you drop out, they win. I know you're scared. I know this school, my school was basically like, they were all basically going to pay me not to come back. Because I was this kind of the center sort of all of this controversy. Wow. And they were like, it's cool if you don't come back. Like, that's fine. Like, whatever. Mm-hmm. And my just having that support from my parents, right? And that love that so many queer kids don't get.
Yeah.
So many people of color and white folks too, but so many folks who don't have parents. Neither of my parents went to college. My mom went to 1 year of college at that time. They both have gone on to get their associate's degrees since then. But like my parents hadn't gone to college, but they knew that I needed to. And so having that support, having them push, and then I think realizing, I'm gonna fast forward a little bit. I think realizing as a healthcare professional who is Black, who is queer, who loves, I like media, I like engaging in this environment, that is an incredible privilege. Mm-hmm. And I have been sort of bestowed this privilege and this platform, and I had better damn well use it for the right purposes. Yeah. My mom, when she did leave nursing and she went into the ministry, my mom actually retired as a United Methodist minister.
Oh, wow.
And my dad has been for years, he's that guy, and I'm going to try to get him a profile sometime, but he's that guy who's like, he's been a football coach and all kinds of different things. And he's that guy who was like paying these kids private school tuition, like taking them food on the weekends, like taking mothers of the players to their doctor's appointments so they didn't have to ride the bus in the middle of the snow, and not telling a soul that he was doing that stuff. So I feel very lucky that that's in my blood. Like that's how I was raised. Mm-hmm. And so I knew that I was like, great, James, you have all these people, you're in this amazing profession. You get to really influence people's lives on a daily basis. You are also given so many opportunities to speak in the media. This platform is not about you trying to do whatever. This platform is about elevating your communities and trying to make it just a little bit better for the next generation.
Yeah, I know. It's funny for me because going through undergrad and then going through my master's program were like night and day. But it seems like if I was going to have a better experience, it would have been undergrad, but it wasn't. It actually wasn't, because in undergrad, it was in a bigger, now all of it was still in Tennessee. Okay. Let me give you
Now,
that background.
where in
Okay?
Tennessee are you from, by the way?
Well, I'm originally from Jackson, Tennessee, which is
Okay.
about an hour from Memphis. So it's like West Tennessee. But then I went to school in Knoxville, the University of Tennessee. Go Vols. And that's where, so, and the culture, even within that little long state, is totally different. And it's geographical, because in the west side of the state, it's all flat, and that's where cotton fields were, and that's where all the Black people are, because people were sharecroppers. But as
That's
you
where
go,
my people are from, Memphis and
yes,
um, Clarksdale, Mississippi. Like
yes.
we're northern Mississippi, West Tennessee folks. So I know exactly what you're talking about.
And as you go more eastern, you start to get into the mountains, which are not good farming land. I mean, they definitely have like coal miners up there, but that's not where Black people were after slavery. We were
Right.
in the cotton fields. So it's literally a culture shock to go from West Tennessee to East Tennessee and go to college there. And so in undergrad, I did meet a lot of racism with my professors. Out of like 130 kids, there were probably like maybe 5-6 Black kids. And there were certain teachers, certain professors that had a reputation from like classes before me. Before I even applied, I had already heard about some professors that were known to they didn't like minorities.
Like,
it
period.
wasn't just Black people. It was minorities. And if English wasn't your second language, there were a couple of girls that their first language was like, they were Korean, and they did not last a semester. Really? They did not try to help them. And this is, I mean, it was that shocking. But Knoxville is one of the bigger cities in East Tennessee. Right. But then when I went to my master's program, I was the only Black person in like every nursing program except for the bachelor's degree, and it was a Black male. So in the CRNA, in my whole MP program, the ADN, I was the only Black person, but I had the best opportunities there. They protected, yes, because I was in the deep hills of East Tennessee, and I actually had some preceptors that really protected me. And like, as they, like as you're doing your clinicals, they're looking through and they know their patients, and they'll be like, you know what, let me go in and see this patient. And at first I was just like, I was like, okay, maybe they're just complicated. But then after time, I started to know, like, they didn't want me in there. And so, but they protected me, and they always made I had the best. I was so prepared when I came out, and, but you would have thought it would have been the opposite, but it wasn't. Yeah. But what really made me go for it, I'm going to be honest, a lot of times, sometimes when you hear stuff so much, you can start to believe things about yourself, what people tell you about yourself. And if it were not for the people, if it was not for my support, my husband, like, well, he was my boyfriend at the time. But I remember I was like looking at about to fail out of my undergrad program and crying on the floor, and him picking me up, and he was like, "You gonna do this?" Because I was like, I'm about to go be a Hooters waiter. Like, that's what I'm about to do. I don't know what else to do. Like, I done wasted all my time. I don't know what else to do.
Right.
And he was like, you don't do this. And my parents, like, whatever you need, like making sure that I didn't have any distractions. And that's what really got me through until I was able to stand on my own 2 feet. And it wasn't until I had been a registered nurse, a bedside nurse, for a few years. It wasn't until I became an MP and having my preceptors affirm me and say, like, you are meant for this. Like, this is your, because up until then, I never had a preceptor. Not like when I was in undergrad, like, I was just like, I may not be a good nurse. I'm just probably not one of those people that are good nurses. No, it was when I went to my master's program, and the only little speck of color in a sea, for miles and miles that I found. And so it's not like and one of the things that I do want to clear up with people, because I do feel like some people don't like to engage in racial conversations because they automatically feel like we're talking specifically to you. No, but it's always some bad apples in every bunch. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And, you know, just like if I, as a woman, am seeing a woman having some unfavorable behavior, I should be able to pull her to the side and say that. And that goes for every pocket or individual category, because like those professors and my preceptors, they protected me and they used their privilege to protect me so I wouldn't be discouraged as a student, you know,
Right.
because that could have broken me. That could have broken me if I would have gone in. And especially the state that I was in and my confidence as a nurse, I'm going to be honest, if I would have ran into something like that horrible, I probably would have been like, I can't do this nursing thing.
It can be soul crushing, right? And then what happens is then they're like, well, we gave this black nurse every opportunity and she decided to drop out. When you could have potentially had such a traumatic experience with like a very racist patient or like a racist doctor or whatever. And you know, I think that's something that a lot of people don't think about so much. And I want to also add on to like kind of something that you said a little bit earlier, because I think it's really important for people to realize that you're right. People don't want to have conversations about race. They really, really don't. And that's okay.
Yeah.
We still need to have the conversation. You might be uncomfortable. That's okay.
Mm-hmm.
You might not be able to leave the conversation like with a pretty little bow on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Conversations about race, conversations about misogyny, conversations about queer identity, about trans identities. Sometimes they're not 47.5-minute long Netflix episodes, right? They're not sitcoms. They're not going to wrap it up in a tiny little bow. So I would say, I love what you said, and I would say as an extension to that as well, that there's this concept, and I mean, we don't, sorry, the dog is decided to play with the toy now. There is, you know, a concept of white-centeredness, right? And so sometimes when white folks don't want to have conversations about race, it's because they feel uncomfortable, and it's because you're centering yourself as a white person. And so if a certain person, and if that person is Asian, Latinx, you know, indigenous, black, whatever, wants to engage with you, or there's a situation that arises to talk about race and you feel uncomfortable, it's because you're centering yourself as a white person. It's not about you. It might be about something racist that you did, but not you as a person.
As an individual.
Right, so don't center yourself in your whiteness. Center that person of color who is trying to help you realize that there's some stuff might have went down that was kind of racist and we need to talk about it. Doesn't mean, right? It doesn't mean that you're going to go to hell and that they think you're the David Duke and a member of the KKK and you burning crosses and all that stuff. That's not where we're going.
Yeah.
But that's something that sort of challenged kind of white folks watching. Like, it's a really tough concept. I know it's controversial. A lot of people don't like it, but like a lot of times when white folks don't want to talk about race, it's because you're centering yourself as a white person, which is kind of the whole problem in the first place. So if you just say, you know what, let me just hear. I might not agree. I might not like this conversation. We might leave a little bit uncomfortable, but that's okay, because I really like my coworker who's black. I really like my coworker who is, you know, indigenous. So we can work this out, even if we don't wrap it up in a tight little tiny bow in our half-an-hour lunch.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, now in your current, like where you're at currently in your career, what's next for you? So what's your goals? Like, what are you, if you feel comfortable sharing?
Yeah, know? Sure.
So what's on the horizon for you?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so what are the goals? I feel like I did not start out this way, but this is sort of what has developed in doing this Ask the NP and like media stuff, whatever. I feel like there is a complete underrepresentation of nurses in media, period. Yeah. And there's data about that. Is it the Whitehall report? I think it just completely blanked my mind. That literally shows like, I think it's like 98.5% of the individuals who speak about healthcare issues in the broader media are physicians, are medical doctors. I will never talk bad about medical doctors. Yeah. They're great. We need medical doctors to help us run the whole system, right? Yeah. That's just how our healthcare system works. Like, I'm never going to talk bad about physicians, but if we're the largest healthcare workforce by far in the United States, what you know else what I'm about to say next, right? 19 years running, we're the most trusted profession, right? We love to lean on that one, don't we?
Yes,
But
we
we
do.
are. 19 years, we're the most trusted profession. We're the largest workforce. People trust us. Everybody knows a nurse. And when there's something wrong with you or your family, you go to the nurse first, right? You're like,
Yeah.
oh, you know, my neighbor, let me ask them right quick. And they send a text. Why are we not in TV? Why are we not portrayed in movies? Why are we not portrayed in reality TV shows, wherever,
Yeah.
as being the experts that we are?
Mm-hmm.
And particularly because I feel like with everything we've talked about now this entire time, with all of the background that I have, so being a queer individual, being a person of color, I get to bring all of those experiences into then also nursing and say, okay, there is no group of individuals who are better suited to rip down the walls of this horribly racist, queerphobic, transphobic healthcare system and fix it for everybody than nurses. And I am a Black queer nurse, male nurse in a female dominated profession. I feel like I have a voice to help initiate all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So what is next? I mean, I want to, my alma mater where I did my NP, did a little magazine piece on me. It was also very embarrassing, but I'm trying to like learn to accept my flowers.
Mm-hmm.
They were like, is this the next Sanjay Gupta is what they titled it.
Okay.
I was like, okay, I would be completely fine with that, right? Or I really do feel like there's not just a seat at the table, but how we communicate with people about their health.
Yes.
In the broader media needs to change to be more centered on individuals who are being disproportionately impacted by COVID. Yes. Disproportionately impacted by diabetes, by HIV, which is what I did my doctoral research on, right?
Yes.
So if we very clearly know that there are better health outcomes when people are taken care of by providers who have their same shared experiences. So in breaking that down, Black folks get better care from Black folks, right? Gay folks get better care from gay folks. So why are there no Black and gay and Latinx and Asian American individuals who are leading the conversation about how we talk about health?
Yeah.
And I want to be a part of that. I want to help change that. I see absolutely no reason why there can't be nurses here, there, and everywhere. Like, why did it take a petition for Joe Biden to get a nurse on his COVID task force? And the nurse he got is great from Seattle and whatever. That's awesome. But why did it take a petition? And then he was like, yep, okay, we'll have one nurse. And then it almost feels like token after that, right? Okay, well, y'all got mad that I didn't have a nurse, so let me go on ahead and grab this woman right here. That's lovely and great, but like,
we got to do better.
We got to do better.
We're the very people, and like you said, not to take away from any other health profession, but you got to call a spade a spade. Like, we're literally, I saw a t-shirt, it was like, we're always watching. We're always there. You know, like, we're there. We're actually doing education all the time. We're undoing education. We're reconfirming, doing demonstrations. We're everything, you know, and especially during this time of COVID, like, those are the people who are there 12 hours a day.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I was night shift, baby. I was there.
Oh.
Okay. I didn't take no naps. I didn't even know what the sleep room was. You know what I'm saying? Because we didn't sleep. We would have got fired. But, you know, I'm just saying, like, who else would know from just sheer, I'm seeing this patient. I know exactly what's going on. I can tell you that. Yep. But yeah.
And even in larger arenas, right? Like it is because of those experiences that you just said right there that I think nurses, and we can start thinking about nurses in a different way. Like, nurses can also talk about helping craft a national public health strategy to help prevent the spread of COVID-19. A national strategy that vaccine rollout could have been better, right? Yep. A national strategy to prevent the numbers of syphilis is like exploding everywhere now. Like, right? People only think of us in what you just described there. And I think that is the foundation that can make us so incredible to do other things, to not only have a seat at the table, but be leading the table, leading the charge in all of these different arenas. And there's no reason why that cannot happen in media. So that's what I'm trying to do. Who knows where? I mean, I feel like there are 47,000 things in the works, and 2 of them ever happen. That's kind of like life, right? I'm learning this in this whole media world, but that's great because it's I really watched something today. I watched something today that really, really set in with me, and it was I'm a big sports person. I'm a big sports nerd, and I think it was the coach of the North Carolina or NC State football team, and he has this like speech talking about the process is you have to love the process just as much as you love the prize. Mm-hmm. And I love this process. I love talking to you. I love doing all this stuff. I love doing my little video. I did that little video with the wig the other day. Like I love doing all this. And then literally right after that, I was like on a local news station being very buttoned up about COVID. Like I love doing both of that. I love educating. I love when people get mad at me in comments and they're like, why are you always talking about race and being queer? Like, because nobody else is, right? Like I love it. I love it. I love it. I love the process. So for me, it's not even about Kim. Like, if I become the next Sanjay Gupta or somebody give me a TV show or if I'm, I'm on GMA or like whatever, that's great. I want to do all those things, but I'm loving the process as we go and just trying to change the game.
That's awesome. Well, if you could sum up like one piece, because I know you could say a lot about advice.
You mean I can talk a lot?
No, because I can say a lot too, because nurses, with the question I'm about to ask, it can come, it can go. We can talk about this. Any nurse. What piece of advice would you give nurses? This could be new nurses. This could be seasoned nurses. This could be any type of nurse. Right now, what's on your heart? What type of advice would you give nurses right now?
Ooh, I mean, there's so much I could say.
I told you.
I feel like I have to say, and I feel like I don't say this enough, like to my fellow nurses, thank you for just everything that we've done in the middle of this pandemic right now. Mm-hmm. We literally would not be, and I don't mean that in the like, oh, nurses hold your hand. Like, yes, we know that, but there have been some badass nurses like handling things to help get this country and this world through the pandemic. So just a thank you to everything you're doing. I'm there with you, and I know how much it hurts. I would say you picked the right profession, and don't forget that. Because everything we talked about, you don't have to be a bedside nurse. You can teach, you can write, you can be an administrator, you can be in the media, you can travel, you can lead mission expeditions. You can go save rhinoceroses in Zimbabwe and be the medical person there. Yeah. You can be a first responder in a helicopter. You can fly the helicopter. Yeah. You can there are so many things that once you have that RN, the world is literally your oyster. And so I would just tell everyone, just like I told everyone to open their minds about race when you're having conversations, and open your mind about, queer LGBTQ plus folks. Open your mind about yourself and what you're capable of. If you are burned out, which a lot of us get, if you are burned out doing what you were doing, boo, go ahead and do something else. Yeah. Because it's there. Because guess what? I don't think there's any other profession that is better suited to being like, that was great. CT ICU for 17 years was awesome. And now I'm gonna go speak. Yeah. About whatever. Thyroiditis.
I'm gonna go write these books.
I'm gonna go write this book, right? I'm gonna go do whatever. I'm gonna be a consultant. People are making. I mean, I won't shout any of them out by name, but because a lot of people watching know them. But I have some nurse influencer friends, whatever, who are making bank. They have not, and they're happy. Yeah. And they're educating people, and they're helping the community, and they're doing those core things that we do as nurses. They haven't been at a bedside in years. Yeah. Woo.
This was good, James. Thank you.
This was so fun. Thank you so much.
Good. We got to do some more kikiing.
I know, especially because I know this now. You know where I was going to go with this, and I know this Instagram about to cut off. But if you're from West Tennessee, I'm like, are we kin folk?
Well, wait a minute.
We
I
have.
probably know your people. I probably do.
I would say if we're not kinfolk, right? At least I'm sure our people know people, whatever. So we'll have to talk about that offline. But thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Trusted Health, too, for having me. This means the world. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys, and we will be back for the next installment next week. And thank you, James.